Okay, hello, hello, hello to everybody out there watching and listening to us. Thank you so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your co-hosts, Tyrell Collins.
And I'm Vernon Scott, and welcome to the podcast, everybody. Just to get started, check in. How are you doing, Tyrell?
Oh, I am doing good. This week was very nice for weather purposes, which I'm glad because, this weather has been just, uh, I'm not even gonna put it into words. It's been a monster.
Mm.
I just can't. So I'm glad that the weather has been great this week. But as we move into summer, as we've continuously talked about, y'all, we gonna need some help getting through this. We gonna need some help getting through this summer.
I think this week was Kickstarter of hurricane season as well. So
Yeah.
those are building up. It's just, you know.
Mm,
I know. I'd say a highlight for this weekend, at least for me, because I ended up having, well, not having to. I got to come to the Atlanta area to see a friend of mine who's
mm,
from New York.
ooh,
Um, so I was like, yeah, you're going to be in Georgia, so let me set up some time. And it was also a work weekend, so I traveled here. We went to Bulldogs last night, so it was his first time going. That
okay.
was a great time, and
Nice.
then I'm on my way back home after we are done recording. So, um,
Look, y'all are currently experiencing in progress.
right, like, Negro is tired, y'all. I am
Mm,
sleeping in tomorrow. The day, I have the day off, even though
yeah,
technically I'm going to be working a little bit, but that little bit of work is not going to
yeah, it's
overshroud
not. It's not.
all of the rest I'm getting tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it.
Same, same. I'm gonna be at home and I'm just gonna be relaxing, doing like little small things that I need to do, but like it's great to just not have anything pressing to do.
Amen. Amen. Like these therapy notes that I could have done before we hopped on this podcast, I was like, mm-mm.
Mm-mm,
Who are
no,
they, girl? Who are you? What do you want? I don't. My phone is on do not disturb. Like, don't call me today, notes. Do not.
no. Look, my phone been on silent for the past 2 days, so I've been having to periodically check
Mm.
my phone. Like, if you want to, and that's a like good tip. Like, if you want to deprogram from your phone, like just turn it on silent. Because I feel like turning it off is like I always have that fear of like, okay, what happens like in the case of an emergency? Because that's usually like when an emergency will happen. So
Hmm.
I never like turn my phone on off, but like when I usually don't like being disturbed, yeah, I could put it on do not disturb, but I find like just putting it on silent just like works for me. That way I can respond to what I want to, and then I can feign ignorance, like, oh, it was on silent, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, amen. My phone stays on silent as well. Like, it's not bad that I'm so detached from my phone. It's just because I'm detached from my phone, there's occasions where my phone is missing.
Hmm.
And then, I become more of present knowledge and be like, oh my God, where is my phone? Where did I go today? Oh shit. Sorry, excuse the language, y'all. Where is my phone?
Oh, right.
Now I'm over here like, okay, let me go ahead and find this thing. Found it. Okay, I can return some of these messages. Okay, put this somewhere safe.
Mhm.
Ah.
Oh, goodness.
All right, so today we're going to be picking up some of the conversations from last week that I said that we will be going into this week. But to start this conversation off, I thought that it would be great to talk about a little bit of anti-intellectualism.
Hmm.
Now, for anybody who's unfamiliar with the word, so I just put it up on the Googles because it's so much easier that way to just read it. So
Okay.
anti-intellectualism refers to a distrust or dislike of intellectual thought in those who are seen as representing it, often leading to a dismissal of education, philosophy, art, literature, and science as impractical. And it can manifest as the belief that educated individuals and critical thinking are out of touch with everyday life. Now, the reason why I thought it would be a great idea to start having this conversation is, well, the thing that sparked this like I already had this mindset of this anti-intellectualism just needs to stop. But
Mhm.
the more I've been seeing some of the snippets of Marc Lamont Hill interacting with some of the guys from the Joe Budden podcast and how they may have an emotional reaction for some from some of the knowledge that he's just dropping on them. It just remind me of how we are in a culture, our society mindset that a lot of people are turning their backs on the people who went to school to get the knowledge in order to do the jobs that they're doing today, or the people
Mhm.
who are doing the active research on certain topics, and now they're providing that information to a community, regardless of where that community may come from, white, black, whatever the case. It's something that's prevalent throughout. Um, but whenever they provide this information, they often get pushback, right? I see it most often. This is part of the reason why I just stopped commenting on a lot of social media things. Is like whenever people bring up trans women, trans women's right, or just trans people in general, or people start talking about LGBTQ in a broader aspect of what sexuality is, how that may be on a spectrum, gender being on a spectrum, race being a social construct. When people are introduced to all of these new terms, their immediate thought is to push back. You don't know what you're talking about, or they rely on what they know, which oftentimes is the Bible. And it's like, it's nothing that a person is saying is here to discredit what you believe or what your faith may align with. It's just helping you see that there's a side of humanity that you may not be as aware with. There's a side of the intellectual space that you're unknown to because you have not been exposed to that, and that is okay. It doesn't mean that you're dumb. It does not mean that you're unintelligent. It doesn't mean that you're fully ignorant, or incapable of gaining this knowledge. It's just introducing, like, hey, this is something. Right? And rather than open ourselves to the possibility of what may not be true there, we tend to just deny that. And in doing that, we align ourselves with thoughts that just makes us feel good, right? And we take those feel good messages as fact when they're not really fact. Right? They just make you feel comfortable. They feed into the confirmation bias that you have. It reinforces the cognitive dissonance that you may be experiencing. I don't necessarily feel like defining that in the moment. Google it, people. But in experiencing this in real time, it just reminds me of the a common thing I used to see online a couple years ago. Not necessarily the, oh, now that you got your degree and things. That is a part of it, but it's the other part of conversation, which is why encourage us to go out and seek this education if once we return home with it, you tell us we don't know anything, right? So I wanted to bring that up for the conversation and also get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, that's a really prevalent thing. Speaking from an embodiment from a place of myself, yeah, just getting my doctorate in English, and being a part of higher education for quite some years now. It's it's really, I think, one of those things where I think, like, it's off, like, the nature of this is often like rooted in, obviously, like, this belief that if you are intellectual or intellectuals, right, are like elitists, out of touch, or kind of like this aspect of disconnected from real life. Now, I do believe in certain circles that does tend to be true. I say all the time, some of the most smartest degree people in the world tend to be some of the most out of touch people in the world, because they sometimes, when you are so wrapped up in the nature of educating yourself, or become, or just having yourself plainly in books or research and things like that, you become overly reliant and dependent on it. So it's kind of like as much as you're gaining knowledge, you can't form a thought for yourself.
Mm,
So that's why people will say, like, oh, you can be the smartest degree person in the room, but lack common sense. Or sometimes, speaking from the other end, it's like, no, that don't make sense to me. And it's not coming from a place of, oh, I think that because this person has this thought that they're superior, but it's just like the level of thought, behind it. So just like how you were mentioning, like with the Marc Lamont Hill situation, being on Joe Budden and his podcast, it was kind of like, like from their perspective, when I think he was talking about, like, and forgive me if I'm wrong, he was talking about like something around like Israel and Palestine.
well, that's his history, but more so in those conversations, I know he tackled a little bit of like the truth.
Mm,
Well, one, truth related to women's harms was
mhm,
something that came up like within the last week. But the thing that really sparked me really wanting to talk about this was related to an incident where there was, I don't know the guy's name, but for lack of a better words, he's a flat earther.
mm,
Oh no, eugenicist. The flat earther was somebody that was on the show too, but this guy believed in some of the concepts that white people are biologically superior to black people. And Marc Lamont Hill was just highlighting on that is not actual science and it's been disproved. And once he started asking him to like submit his facts or like what's making you think this way, so like we can actually have a conversation about why this is not correct and how this has been disproven, the guy immediately shut down as though there's no legitimacy towards what Mark Lamont Hill was trying to provide to them. So yeah, that's where it kind of stems from.
no, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's just one of those things. Like, for instance, like when those kind of arguments come up, it's really one of those things, like he'll say, I think you can go about this a little, from various different ways. you know if you're rejecting an idea about something, it's because of the fact that there's a consensus or there's empirical evidence, that says it. So it's kind of like, if something cannot proven to have some merit of truth to it, or it's not a kind of one off or a case by case, or things like that, it's not typically proven to be true. So even in the nature of, like, I know, for instance, like in institutions that I've taught, the way that we teach students to do research, right? We teach students to do research to say, like, what is common knowledge versus, like, when do I need to, like, cite a fact, cite something. And typically we teach the rule of thumb that if something can appear just like in a regular, like, Google search, or it comes up like multiple times in like a search, that like in a just a regular search, it's usually considered common knowledge. Like, if I was writing a paper where I wrote a sentence that said, "Oh, this university was founded in 1976," or something like that, I wouldn't need to cite something like that. That's on the broad internet. That's common knowledge. Now, the more intricate my facts get, now it becomes, now the more I may need to cite something. So even, just getting back to my point. So even with that, it's kind of like, I feel like when you're having to engage with people, it's like, don't debate facts with feelings. So it's often better. It's often, I think it's great to offer a framework, not just correction. Because if somebody tells you that, no, I believe that the earth is flat. No, I believe that white people are the superior to all. There's something in that mindset that they have that, no matter, I'm not going to say no matter, but whatever it is that you say is not going to ring true for them. Another case of a example of what you're talking about, I was watching a really quick Instagram clip of, I think his name is Snowman from Boys to Men. Um, R&B singer
Go with
from
that.
Boy.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, I think his name is Stokeman.
Somebody from Boys to Men.
Yeah, from Boyz II Men. Yeah. Well,
That works.
he was having a conversation with this white guy, and they were talking. I can't remember all the context of their conversation, but they were talking about racial history, and the guy was saying that, I think he threw out a word to say like something about tolerance or something like that, and so he just had this kind of like rebuttal. It's like, no, that's not true. Like, if you look in any of our history, from the massacres that happened, from this or from that, so when you can pinpoint key exact examples, like, you can't erase, as much as people try to attempt to erase history. History has It's there. You can't erase it. You cannot tell me this did not occur when in fact I know it did. No, I wasn't there to see it, but I know it did. So I think that people, they get comfortable with the ideas that suit them.
Mhm.
So again, it's about, I think when people have those kind of things, when they are saying people are superior or this line of thought is the only correct line of thought, it's not just misinformation, but it's dehumanization,
Mhm.
right? So do you honestly believe that a belief system that was built on colonialism, slavery, segregation, genocide, and ongoing oppression is what's good for people? So really stopping to think, like, this isn't just like, oh, you tend to think this, I tend to think that, and yeah, we may be different shades of the same color. You know, this is like polar, just polar opposite aspects. But I think that when it comes to a conversation like this, it's just, some people say like, oh, just use common sense. COVID was a main example of this. Like, during COVID, many people rejected public health advice with saying like, oh, I just use my common sense. Oh, I just did do this. That typically works, right? Ignoring any kind of medical consensus, research, things like that are out there. Now, again, I'm not saying that you should become overly or heavily dependent on one particular frame of idea, but don't use it as a justification or an excuse to why you feel that, not to think any other way as well. So that's my whole thing. It's like, even in like academia, bring up another example. Even in academia, somebody with a PhD education may get asked, but like, well, have you taught in a real classroom? They will, people will try to discredit your expertise. And honestly, that was one of the things that I feared when I first started teaching years ago. When I was in my first graduate program, I was in my MFA program. And as I was taking the praxis, the theory and praxis course to learn how to teach, me and some of my colleagues, that's really what we fear. We feared that when going into a class, students would have that attitude like, okay, I'm being taught by a grad student. Like, you're not a degreed expert,
Mhm.
technically in this field, even though obviously all of us had bachelor's degrees, of course. But it's kind of like you're not necessarily what they would consider a professional, right? So we feared that. We feared going into class and them thinking that, discrediting whatever expertise that we had. But I can't speak for other people. I just know in my experience, I've actually experienced the actual opposite. I think students, they tended to gravitate toward me more because I was closer to their age. I was still in studies and, things like that. So it made their curiosity about class, more, kind of engaging. But I mean, things like that, they do happen.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad that you brought up the COVID example too, because I think that's where, well, I feel as though that's where a lot of the rise of anti-intellectualism really
mm,
um, started at. Of course,
mm,
it was something that existed prior to this, but it wasn't as bad until then, which I get why there was some concerns because during those COVID times, especially earlier on, many people fed misinformation. Then we have incompetence in the house. That's even making things worse. I
mm,
still will remember putting,
mm,
suggesting injecting bleach into your bloodstream, which
man.
I would say as a joke. but that
Mm,
was very serious about what he was saying. Not going to work out that way. But like with all of that and how that just fostered this idea that mixed in with the hysteria that people were feeling that okay, um these services, these educators that we've known for such a long time may not be here to work in our best interests, right? Like I have to say, even with what I was experiencing during that time, I
mm,
became a little bit more skeptical about, okay, will this thing really happen? If they do have this vaccine, will it be something that I will want to do? And I had to really dive deep into my own history with immunization, go back into my classes from high school, remember how viruses work, do my own independent things to get to a point where I was like, wait, you trusted stuff like this before?
mhm,
You have to recognize that this is some fear that's present, that these are a lot of other things that's making you feel as though this is not going to be helpful. And you really have to move past that to go to where the facts lie, where the facts exist, and lean into those facts to
mm.
really make whatever you want happen.
Exactly.
Um, and then on top of that, something else I wanted to touch base on was when you mentioned the sorry, I got a weather alert, and I'm supposed to be driving tonight, making sure I am safe to go. Um, but when you mentioned elitism, and I think that's a important thing to highlight because I get it. When you do go off to college and have a bachelor's degree, some college that does put you in a different class structure in a way, you have a
Mm,
little bit more access to different opportunities. So I get how some, well, people will see college educated people as being elites, and some people carry that way too far.
mm,
And one of the things that I try to do is be on a human level,
yeah.
which what I've learned over the years, or what I personally experienced, is when people place themselves above me because they have a certain kind of degree, and I see how that behavior pushed more people away from education. And that was something I picked up on way before I went to college, right?
Mm,
Like even to this day, like Tyrell, I'm very lackadaisical when it comes to the title doctor because I'll tell people it's there, like it's very much so
mm,
implied. But I'm not going to force people to call me doctor because I've been that on that other end where somebody takes that title so much, so strongly that they belittle another
yeah.
person. So because of that, I don't put so much emphasis on it to the point that I'm making somebody feel less than. So you can call me Mr. Scott, you can call me Mr. Vernon, or you can just call me Dr. Scott or Dr. Vernon. All those things are fine. I will answer to them. Just don't get disrespectful with it, right? And I do that so that the people in the room don't ever have to feel judged
Right.
by anything that I say. Whenever it comes to how I educate them, right? Bringing new thoughts into the room because I don't want them to think, oh, he just thinks he's better than us. No, he is walking along with you in this educational journey, and I'm just bringing you along with me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true. And that's such an interesting perspective. And it's not because I have the opposite, but because I do agree with you. And I've had to think about now that I technically do have the credentials and the degree, I had to really think to myself, like when I do get my new nameplate, that will have Dr. Collins on it, like how do I how do I assert a title without sounding like I'm bragging or gatekeeping or sounding like elitist? Because it's one of those things I think that we're always taught to remain humble, especially as Black intellectuals, especially as Black scholars. But it's also to signal and to say, like, no, I worked for this. Like this just didn't fall out the sky. So I've been thinking about that for the past few weeks. Because I've even had students in the past to refer to me as Dr. Collins, even though I didn't have a doctor. And I usually tell my students, oh yeah, you can call me Mr. Collins, whatever. But now that I officially have that title, it's like, okay, I think how I am going to try to go about it is to, center the collective, not just myself. So it's like I go by Dr. Collins because like it's important to honor like the work that I'm doing. Right.
Mm,
It's not just for me, just because I want to be called a doctor. Like that's not, even when people ask me about school, I tell people all the time, school, it was not a trajectory for me just so I can give myself degrees and just give myself titles. No,
mhm,
it's so that I can continue to, as we're speaking about, learn from a prism of perspectives. I
mhm,
want, by me going into and being so heavily involved in school, it's allowed me to understand the world in a very empathetic way that other people may not have. I always say there are, obviously, as we know, there are various kinds of smarts in the world,
mhm,
various kinds of smarts in the world. And I've often always said I'm often a bit envious of people who have different types of trade and other types of skills in the world, because it's like I'm only good at one thing. So it's like I got to make this work for me somehow. But yeah, I think that when it comes to a matter like this, when speaking of anti-intellectualism, lived experience for many people is knowledge,
mhm,
which
mhm,
is a factor that's true, but it often becomes a way to dismiss like scholarship entirely. So people will be like, oh yeah, what do you know? I had that economy growing up. A lot of people felt like because I always loved to read, I was always in my books and things like that. I even got teased by family members, like by my uncles. I mean, like they would always say, "Oh, look, you're so book smart," But I would always often get to think of I'm not street smart. And so it's kind of like growing up, you start to believe that dichotomy a little bit. And then ultimately start to question it, because I ultimately got to the place of, well, what is it? What does it mean to be street smart? You know, is it basically like, oh, can I talk my way out of a situation? Is it more so having common sense when it comes to certain things? So I don't know. But all I know is that I think with this, it isn't just about dismissing big words or big ideas, right? It's about undermining the role of ideas, the role of what theory and what language does, right? And so when we walk that kind of delicate balance, I think intellectualism, like, especially like among Black people and Black scholars, that idea of brilliance, it has to be, we frame it as like it has to be relatable for it to be valid. So like when that interview with Marc Lamont Hill came, it's like, okay, can you just put this in plain terms? Like it's like, can you just put this in plain terms? But no, it's like, no, he's framing it because he's framing a conversation around it as well,
mhm.
you know. So so it's like the rigor, the reflection, the analysis are not all the times welcome unless it's casual, if it's emotional, if it's performative. That's why so many scholars go through imposter syndrome, because really have to you really have to act one way in a professional set, in an academic setting, versus how you are in just your day to day, you know. So there is an element, I think, to everybody's fields, careers, and things like that, that is performative, but it's not allowing the performative to take over, in a sense. So I
Yes.
think for anti-intellectualism, like, it doesn't mean people are dumb, right? It means that we've been taught to distrust thoughtfulness,
Mhm.
so, and that's often, by systems of design that, benefit from us having uncritical minds. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, if we go back to the nature of chattel slavery, why do we think that, slave masters never wanted us to know how to read?
Exactly.
right? Because reading was knowledge, you know. So so yeah, that's a very it's a very interesting thing to always, you know, delve into.
I agree. I agree. To this day, this is like a part, something that I think more people need to really think about, especially when you're approaching people who may have an advanced degree, and if you may not trust that what they're providing you as information is how they communicate to people. Do they communicate in a humanizing way, or do they communicate to make other people feel less than? And that will tell you if this is a person who has your best interest in mind, or if they're just here to communicate to make themselves feel good. Because those type of people who do it just to make themselves feel good, it will swing either way the facts may really present themselves, and
Hmm.
that's not responsible in the terms of what brought them to earning the degrees that they have on their name.
Right.
Is very irresponsible and is very harmful for those who may not have that knowledge.
Exactly.
And this is another reason why I don't. When anybody try to disrespect me in terms of my education, I let them know I earned every single degree that I attempted, and it
Hmm.
wasn't given to me because there were always, on some level, a force pushing back to
Hmm.
make me not get that information, especially when it came to my doctorate, because I was
Exactly.
already told that this, what you're working on, may not even be something that we can approve
Hmm.
because of it being related to rape culture and all that. So I already had in my mind that I may not even be able to publish, so I didn't really publish my dissertation. It's been, approved and all that because, title. But this is also why when it comes to the book that I wrote, I say that's my dissertation,
Hmm.
right? That's what I wanted to accomplish in a lot of what I've went to school for, and there you go. That's it. Um, but yeah, find you a mofo that earned their degree and not someone who it was just given to because they approached the information a lot differently.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely.
That's all I have for that subject. No, part of what our discussion today is love is blind. So what's all right?
Mhm.
What's going on with that situation? Because again, I
Ooh,
don't be knowing
yes.
things. I'm so far behind on that show.
Yeah,
Haven't seen it
yeah,
since. Yeah.
yeah. So this is so of course, if you are, you know, a Love is Blind fan, if you tuned into season 7, I believe. Y'all know the seasons out there. Y'all know. But it's something that was recently posted. One of the contestants from the most recent season, I'm just gonna say that. Um Ashley, I don't know people's last name. So forgive me, I don't know that. But one of the contestants, Ashley, and her now ex-husband Tyler, they were one of the main, you know, plot stories of the more recent season. And Ashley just recently did a candid interview with another former Love is Blind contestant from the previous season before that, AD. Smith. I actually do know her last name because it's easy to remember. Smith. She has a podcast called What's the Reality? And this was one of the first times I think Ashley was sitting down for like a, you know, just an exclusive interview from after all that has happened. And so it has sparked some outrage across like fandom because um, all while Ashley and AD were, you know, kind of chopping it up, you know, things like that. Um, yeah, I think fans were really hoping for like some accountability to have been taken, and it just wasn't. So, just for a little bit of context, during the most recent season of Love is Blind, I'm just gonna say, during the show, Ashley's fiance at the time, Tyler, disclosed that he had fathered 3 children through sperm donation for a friend and her wife. However, post show revelation contradicted what he said. the child's mother, I don't remember what her name is, y'all can look that up, look the stories up for yourself, alleged that Tyler was not merely a donor, but actually had an active role in the children's lives, including cohabitating and signing birth certificates. So she also accused Tyler of actually being a absentee father and owing child support, especially around the nature of when the show was supposed to start filming and things like that. And so during the show, Ashley, of course, she expressed distress because Tyler, did in fact end up telling her about the whole sperm donation, things like that. And I think what really pushed fans over the edge, because it's something to talk about in our culture when you watch, you know, gorgeous black women just, you just follow the end of the train down
Become
the
a
hill.
bird.
'Cause, yeah, exactly. When it's like, because and that's the thing about this whole situation when we're watching the episodes that are airing are, you know, they're a year old now because like the cast, when they have to watch it back, it's been a year for them since filming.
Mhm.
So whenever you're hearing cast interviews, you're always hearing it from the perspective of, okay, yeah, that was like a year ago. And I'm not necessarily just in a different place, but like now having to relive it because you're having to now relive it with fans, it puts you back into certain places. The thing that people came for Ashley about, kind of online was that one kind of post reunion, despite all that came out about Tyler, she, from my perspective at least, she was one of those like my man, my man, my man.
Mhm.
So and again, if you're going to defend, you have every right to defend your spouse, to defend your partner, damn what the world says. And if that's the way you feel, more power to you. Um, Now, mind you, if it ends up having you two look stupid, that just is the result. But if you stick to your convictions, I want
Yes,
to,
honor, honor
you
your
have the right to
beliefs.
stick to your convictions. Now, the context of this, what we're talking about with the podcast about AD interviewing her, was that people were bringing up, it was a really kind of tone deaf deflection and really gaslighting type of an interview. I think many people who were listening to Ashley, because people have been wanting to hear her full, side and perspective. And many viewers really felt that instead of holding Tyler accountable for withholding the truth about his children, the conversation really was focused more on deflecting blame onto social media users, particularly Black women. Ashley and AD particularly talked about like the venom that is spilled, you know, online. And it's not to say that there are not trolls out there, we all know. But I think what the fan reaction is that they're like, okay, yeah, again, we talk about a prism of perspectives. Yeah, that may have been like a small percentage of, people, but everybody kind of felt offense because people in the comments were like, Ashley, girl, what are you talking? Like, what is reality? Again, what's in your reality? What is the reality you living in? Because, I mean, she was being backed while she was being done wrong,
Mhm.
and people were really feeling sympathetic to her while this situation was happening because they felt when it does hit the fan and these secrets, are going to tend to spool out, like she is going to be looking embarrassed and, things like that. And so, really, Black community was really showing up to show her, like, no, girl, like, no, we got you. You being lied, you being deceived and stuff like that. So, to have her to have this aspect where AD is really centering Ashley's hurt feelings, centering like her hurt feelings rather than the harm caused by Tyler's actions, was a little bit gross to people. Like they say, like this, it's misplaced frustration made many people, I think, feel like gaslit.
Mm.
Like the legitimate concerns about Tyler's deception were being dismissed as like hate or jealousy. you know. And then I also thought that this was a very prevalent case as I was listening to the interview, this kind of weaponizing, right, that we talk about with, I think, with Black womanhood. You know, they repeatedly emphasize, of course, how difficult it is to be a Black woman in the public eye, which absolutely true. But I think that what the criticism was that they fans, I'm just going to say fans in general, I
Mhm.
think they felt like they were using that reality to shield themselves from fair criticism. So viewer, they're quick to point out that Ashley used her platform to defend and marry a man who lied about fatherhood, then turned around and painted critics, many of whom were also Black women, as unsupportive or toxic. So, it's this kind of duality. So again, it's not taking away anything from her experience. She's allowed to feel how she feels. She's allowed to experience how she experiences. But it gives this aspect, just like how we were talking about with our last topic, this kind of anti-intellectualism. When we talk about intersectionality, that impression of intersectionality was being used to perform, not actually address the real harm that was caused. So those were two of like the main things that I was seeing. But like, what were some of like your thoughts for like things that you may have heard or about from like the interview or like from what people were saying like in comments?
Well, first thing I want to say is this is why historical context is very important. Because like when I watched the interview, I came into this not knowing anything about who Ashley is, who AD is, who Tyler is, in which I now got a new name for him as Liler, which is very interesting. And YouTube will make sure that you get the context. So I just don't understand how some people go throughout life without getting it because I got one perspective and an immediate referral to a new perspective. And I was like, how did we? Okay, give me this insight. So, but like when I initially watched it, I was kind of rocking with what she was saying because I was like, okay, I understand how this can be. And it shows how certain things can be really manipulated based off of
Mm,
how a person's being interviewed, especially if we're not diving deep into what all of this means, right? Like, okay, why did you stay with Tyler? Why did you
mhm.
defend this situation with the kids? And I will say one thing that really did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable was when she referred to the kids as donor babies. Um,
Yeah. Mm, yeah.
because
Mhm.
when I heard it, I was like, okay, I kind of get what you're trying to say here, but something in how you said this sounds like an insult.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know why, but it's giving why we have beef with these kids. Like, what's happening here? Like, that was one thing that was very unsettling for me, which a separate video really gave me some clarity on that. Because from what that video said is that she started to go after the children for whatever reason. Um, and rather than holding her then husband accountable
Mhm.
for his lies. And I think like within hearing her talk about Tyler, um, it seemed as though even how she was describing their situation, she was still giving excuse for him.
Mm,
Like I got that vibe because I'm like, in what ways are you really calling him a liar? Because what it sounds like, okay, he mentioned that he fathered well, he donated his sperm for one child, and you confirmed that's what that was like. And then you mentioned that the mother of the children are happens to be a mass presenting lesbian, which I'm like, okay, so she don't want a man. That makes sense to me. So and then we bring up these other two kids, and they are conceived through coitus. So I'm
mhm.
like, okay, they had sex. Maybe they have a deep friendship, and friendship turns to one night of passion, and now we have these kids, and now we don't know how to deal with it. So I'm just like, I don't see the real issue.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the thing again, and this also has to do about the Love is Blind editing. Over the past few seasons, people have
mhm,
really complained about we are not actually, we're missing a lot of context when the couples get out of the pods and they're out of the honeymoon, especially like with the previous like 2 seasons. We have been missing a lot of context to what happens. It's like being thrown into like the middle or the aftermath of a scene, and you're like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? Like when this whole situation came out, we didn't even get any type of pre-context to it. Like I think we immediately jumped to a scene where Ashley was just like sitting on the sofa. She kind of had her head down. Tyler was like in the next room or whatever. And then we're hearing from production that they had just had this like heavy conversation or, whatever. And, if fans are like, okay, we get like some things that people want to
Mhm.
talk about off screen, but as viewer, we can't form a rational opinion if we're not being given context like to what's going on. And I know for me it's kind of like when I watched this I was like, Tyler, my man, you did not have to lie about this situation, because it's like it's the classic thing about lying. When you tell one lie, then now you have to tell 20 more to cover up the first lie. Like
Mhm.
really, if he had just said, I have 3 children with a close friend. I'm named on their birth certificates. I was involved during the pregnancy, and I'm still figuring out my relationship with them. I consider them to be part of my life. That's the honest truth. That was the honest truth. But instead, he masked these lies and things like that. And then also, you have to understand that donor doesn't erase the emotional tie,
Mhm.
right? So he minimized the situation as merely technical, just being a donor. But Ashley, just like many people, like they want to build a family with someone whose present obligations she understood, right?
Mhm.
So it's really also about being a donor who is legally and emotionally tied to children. Is not just a neutral detail. So the language around that matters. So again, there's a lot of things that yes, he could have done differently. And I felt like part of maybe why Ashley stood kind of not 10 toes down, but she still stuck by him even in the nature of that reunion, was because it was to say like, yeah, maybe certain conversations should have been had, should have used different language and things like that. But I think that what ended up happening was, just like what fans experience watching, she learned so many things after the fact
Mhm.
that was making her, I'm just gonna say, like look real stupid in the eyes of the world. Not to say that obviously she's a stupid woman, of course not. But like the situation is being made to make her look stupid. So, I just, it's one of those things where I felt sorry, of course, for what happened. But yeah, during that interview though, I also, for me, and we were talking about this right before we started recording, Vernon, and it's not to throw shade, but sometimes what happened during that interview is kind of like sometimes why I have the problem with people who decide to just, because they have access to a platform, they
Mhm.
just want to become overnight journalists. Because like even though AD and Ashley are not necessarily like friends, um, because they both live in that love is blind, kind of circle, I understand why it would be easier to facilitate a conversation, with her.
Mhm.
But also that tends to backfire because you're not seen as an impartial interviewer, right? So I think AD, she guided the conversation towards like that emotional validation. She didn't necessarily challenge inconsistencies that were in Ashley's narrative, right? It was painted that Tyler's critics were, as haters or, miserable people, without acknowledging that the public's frustration was based on facts. The
Mhm.
viral TikToks from the actual mother, just all these things. So I think the reason why the fan comments were, just enraged was that in this particular case, I don't think that fans, of course, fans always want drama. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like with this case, fans didn't want the drama; they wanted accountability. And I think what they got during this interview felt like a PR spin,
Mm,
you know. And so, and I just think that also, from some comments that I was also too reading, I think that some people also just felt like Ashley seemed to prioritize her reputation over like the reflection that she should have had. Like, of course, sharing hurt about divorce. I mean, I can only imagine. I have never been married, so of course
mhm,
I've never been, of course, on brink of divorce or anything like that. But I can only imagine how that is when you're living it. You're going through the process of it, you know. But I also think that some people felt that, she took, how can I say this? Like she took too long, I guess, to like distance herself from Tyler. Like she didn't fully acknowledge the red flags, people were seeing early on.
mhm,
And again, the show is always what we're seeing, it's been a year for those people. But I think what immediately happened was when not just for when she did the reunion, but it's like, okay, it took quite some time for before like the announcement of their divorce was
mm,
actually happening. So you never know. I mean, maybe they were trying to work on it, maybe not. Maybe she wanted to time it, to announce when she was getting divorced. Who knows? Whatever those reasons were. But I think some people really felt like what this was more focused on like clearing my name, right? Than
mm,
being transparent about the timeline and how she really process the truth. And again, when we're being with these interviews, and sometimes I feel like people, of course, in comments, they're just overly irrational because I'm like, if you're watching an interview, yes, you can want whatever you want from the interview, but you're not that person.
mhm.
You're not the one that's living through it. You're not, you can't make people say what you want them to say. You can't make people feel how you want them to feel, but yeah, I just thought that interview was a really great way to ask ourselves the question like what does accountability look like when you have public relationships,
Mm.
when you are in the spotlight, what does it mean to, take accountability, especially with the social media age that we live in? It's like, of course, we talk about it all the time. You can't sneeze without somebody capturing it, on camera, so it's like if you don't take accountability, you're going to get called out for it. But then if you do take accountability, now everybody and their baby mama going to be dissecting it, you
Mhm.
know? About what you said. Oh, you did. Oh, you made mention of this, but you didn't make mention of that. Oh, so where did this come into play? And now it's this whole thing instead of
Yeah.
just stating your piece and leaving it at that.
It's the problem of the parasocial relationships that we've created
Mhm.
with a lot of the celebrities are just people that happens to be on TV because we don't know these people's lives. But I will say one of the things that immediately perked my ears up was when she brought it up therapy, and I was like, hold up now.
Mhm.
Because I know way too many times where people will bring up that word and we're not doing the work. So let me go ahead and see what's going on here. But again, I don't know her from nobody. So
Right.
hopefully she is doing her work, working on herself and all that. And maybe in the process of doing that work, she really get to a point where she is holding herself a little bit more accountable of what she may have said or contributed to that relationship, and then move past it. But who knows, right?
Yeah. And really at the end of the day, whenever, because again, these, reality relationships, you never really honestly know what's true, what's false, things like that. And to everybody in that situation, Ashley and Tyler for their kid, I just hope that everybody can heal from it and, move on with it, but go on to live their best life.
That part.
Yeah.
Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to try to be as quick as possible with my next thing. And it's a little bit accountability in some aspects, but I know last week, another part of the conversation I said we were going to shift to this week was the
Mm,
situation with DDG and Halle Bailey. And I'm going
mm,
to extend it a little bit more to include DJ Academics and also these other mofos who decided to come out in support of DDG for whatever reason. And for again, for people who may not know who I am, I do not be online like that. Sometimes I'll be watching YouTube and it just comes to me. I don't be seeking this out. I just be trying to live my life, get on my TikToks and enjoy it and then go to sleep. That's all I be trying to do with my life, y'all. But
mm,
somehow the Lord is just like, you want to know something? Here's an interruption. And the interruption is just like, really, this is what we're doing. So this is where we are. But essentially, what I want to talk about as it relates to that situation is misogyny in general. I really want for people to get to the point where they can just admit that they hate women. Like, can we just be honest with that? Like, you do not
yeah.
like women. If you see a person, a woman specifically being abused by their partner, and the first thing that you think is, what did she do wrong? Or if you did not like somebody in the past, and as soon as this person is getting some hot, deserved fire for the abuse that he's put onto that woman, and your next decision is to align with that person that you originally hated, you truly hate women.
Mm,
Like, your hatred of women is so strong that you align with somebody that you despise.
mm,
I need for you people who align with that to let that sink in, because that's what a lot of this stuff is that's been going out recently, be it Cassie, be it Meg, be it Halle Bailey, or even those people who jump to defend academics when he was grooming this little kid on Twitch. Like, Eaton, that was a boy. But all of that is tied into the misogyny that you all hold. And I need for men specifically to start unpacking that. And let's not forget the hatred of Black women, which is misogynoir.
mm, yeah.
we it's important for us to really start to sit in that space and really start to question, why do I feel this way? Why is it that these men can do no wrong, but women are the enemy at all stops? There's no such thing as a victim that's a woman, but there's a countless amount of men who are victims, even though they have on camera on, well, I can't say 4K because that Diddy video was not in 4K, but we can make out what is happening, identify these people, and still align ourselves with them when it comes to them abusing a woman. Like, really sink in and start thinking about what ideology I possess that tells me this behavior is okay, because
Yeah.
it's not. So I wanted to just bring that up and just see what some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, yeah, with with that whole situation, of course, I'm hoping that it gets resolved in the most amicable manner possible. That's my political response, so to say. But but yeah, I mean, I think it highlights a lot of things that you just said, and I think that with the technically, because we still have to call them allegations because they have, technically haven't been
Hmm.
proven. But it highlights the importance of, really just recognizing various forms of abuse, you know.
Hmm.
And let's also, and I think something that we don't often talk about when it comes to forms of abuse. No matter if you are a celebrity or just regular everyday person, that a lot of times we tend to talk about, of course, sexual abuse, in type of physical, emotional abuse, but also I think something that's lacking in conversations for us to uh, have is financial abuse as well.
Mm,
When people hoard the nature of money, over you, it is their right in saying that I should have any kind of access to you. And we're seeing that play out in, of course, like in the Diddy trial, in these, types of situations that come up. And particularly for Halle Bailey and DDG, what does, not just highlighting the aspects, the challenges of co-parenting and what does ensuring that safety and, things like that look like. But again, how do you parent when you are public figures? And again, just like how we talked about with our last topic, what does that accountability look like? The one thing I did laugh about that was funny to me in this situation was that I like the fact that for people that rounded around to support Hallie, like Hallie didn't have to really do anything because his posting and his messages were just so outlandish that it's like, my man, like, even though I ain't on your side, mind you, one, you proving her point, and then two, it's
Hmm.
like you really don't see how you look right. Like, see how you look right now.
Absolutely not. Like, sir, I saw a video, this man using AI to have a conversation with Hallie and him answering in response to it. And I'm just like, what is you?
What
If
is going
I were
on?
the parent in the room, you will not be seeing my child. So what are we doing, sir? Like, you are not okay. I'm not even going to ask the question. I'm going to tell you, you are
You are
not
not okay.
okay in
You are
this
not
moment.
okay.
Because
Like,
this is doing the absolute most. Like,
no, I
who's this
can't.
AI? Are you cheating on me with an AI? Is this why we had to break up? Because you went to your room to feed your AI certain things that you thought I needed to tell you, and now you thinking that
Mhm.
I have to be this AI woman? Oh no. Let me. What is this world?
That's what our next episode should be titled, "The AI Woman."
Papa, who this woman?
Like,
AI. Oh my God.
oh, but yeah, I just cannot, like, sir. Like, for his entourage or his friends or whatever, like, that's one of those, get your boy, do something. Because to me, and it's so sad, when you see, especially black men, as much as we're trying to elevate, we're trying to do good things, and it's like when you see things like this happening, where he just making a complete ass out of yourself.
Mm,
you know it becomes, now it's not just about what you did, it also is about how you look because of it. It's one thing to say, like, all right, me and my lady, like me and my girl, we got into a fight. Hey, I said some things that I shouldn't have. You chalk it up, sort it out however you want to, and move on. But it's like, no, you double down and triple down and
mm.
quadruple down on the things that you do. Like, I can't.
Like, this is why I will forever tell people that, especially because of the work that I do, and I have worked with fathers who, had their children taken away from them and whatnot. But I'm quick to say, if you're not willing to go to the courts, you don't care
Mm.
about your children enough. Because
Oh yeah.
like I get child support and how that can inconvenience a person, but if you want your children to be in your life and you are claiming that the woman that you used to be with, your baby mama, is not allowing you to see your kids, you will do everything in your power to make sure that
Mhm.
you see your kids.
Absolutely. And that is a true message. I've had many conversations with a lot of women, my mom included, and they have openly admitted, yeah, the things that center around women and children in court, like, women do it because they know that they can get away with it.
Hmm.
you know and I've often had the attitude, when it comes to, I'm sorry, when it comes to men, like, no, we do not birth children.
Hmm.
Of course not, we do not birth children. But when it comes to that whole process, unless you have gone through alternative methods, you didn't create this child by yourself. So I'm sorry, I have this thing of, when it comes to the being in the presence of the child and things like that, she don't have no damn wants. I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. And I specifically knew some years ago, just to bring a really quick story, I knew a guy who he was fearful about, taking his, baby mom to court, the mother of his child, excuse me, the mother of his child to court and things like that. But, and I had to have a real honest conversation with him. And I was like, listen, you don't want your child growing up someday asking why you didn't fight for them.
Mhm.
So, as much as you don't want to bring her through the mud or whatever, no, you fight for your child. You fight for your rights. Now, if she does not want to have joint custody or to do whatever the arrangement is, because I feel like, yes, if you can work that out outside of court or, not have, like your other family members involved, because, that could be a whole toxic situation as well. If you and the person that you have come together to create this life with can get on the same page, you're good. But in the retrospect that you can't, because I'm sorry, some women out, a lot of women out here who are mothers, they feel that sense of entitlement because they are the mother, that they are the ones that are deserving of this. And while I praise mothers all day, I'm sorry, it's just not about what you want.
It's about the
That's just
child.
not going. Yeah, because that's just not going to happen. So,
Hmm.
and and like I say, I've had a lot of women to talk to me throughout the years to say the reason why women get away with what they do in that particular case is because a lot of times men don't know their rights. They
Hmm.
don't, because the court obviously historically has not favored men when it comes to fighting for rights, or be quick to have men pay child support. And now, I mean, I'm glad that there are some laws now that kind of prevent it. But I mean, obviously we know it used to be a time where when babies paternities used to come out, and when men found out that you've been paying child support for a child that's not even yours, it's not like you get that money back.
Right.
Like, so the whole way that the system is set up is just it's wrong. And mind you, we are making strides and things like that, but it's like
Hmm.
we still have so much further to go.
Hmm. Oh, and before we get off this topic, one of the last things that I wanted to mention about misogyny, if you fall quick into slut shame, and that's your validation of
Mhm.
not trusting a woman. Oh, I was about to say something that a mental health professional cannot say. Uh, I need for you to sit in a box, just sit down and think about your actions. That's what I'm going to say because you're leaning into foolishness because regardless of how many bodies this person may have, how many people they may have slept with, that does not excuse violence onto them.
Mhm.
That does not give credence for a person to abuse them in any way, talk to them any kind of way, and it doesn't make that person less of a human. So just want to
Yeah.
put that out there. And
And sorry, just last thing. If you A lot of times we talk about old school mentality and things, but guess what? Certain things work for a reason. My father, other men that I knew growing up, they had the classic mentality. When if you in a heated argument with a woman, you ain't got to stand there and take it. Just leave.
hmm
Just leave. Because mind you, if the police get called, you damn for sure gonna be arrested. That's a no. That's a no brainer.
and oof, yes,
Just leave.
just
All
leave.
if she want to argue, if she want to tear up and throw stuff, let her do that. You leave. You have enough autonomy and self control to know, like, wait a minute, this is getting way out of hand. Just leave.
Exactly.
Just
And
leave.
with leaving, it protects your seat in patriarchy
Yeah.
too. Just
Just
to
leave.
be real, because now you can say, yeah, that crazy woman was throwing everything in the house. And surprising when they look in the house and see a lot of things thrown everywhere, they're just going to go ahead and believe you because of misogyny. And here we go. You're fine. There was no legal issues really enacted, and nobody's going to jail.
Mm,
It was all good. And you're still a misogynist. Look at God.
mhm. Right.
Like,
You use it when it works for you. Again. Now, something that is not misogynistic is for any fans out there that love the 2005 series Noah's Ark. you may have heard that they Paramount Plus is actually coming out with a new Noah's Ark movie that is going to be debuting mid-June. I think it's June 20th, if I'm not mistaken, June 20th. And yeah, it's to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of Noah's Ark. So this is very monumental. And I'm really excited. I when it because there have been talks over the years about the fact that the cast would be getting back together to do something. Originally they said that they wanted to do like a mini series, kind of like, I think, like similar to like The Best Man, like the final chapters, which I've really been promoting that lately because The Best Man final chapters were really good. So I've been promoting, like, for all of our black sitcoms, especially, like, that did not have like endings to them. I'm like, yeah, wrapping things up in like a 2-hour movie is not enough. Like, I need a mini series to Girlfriends. I need a mini series to Moesha. I need a mini series to My
Yes.
Wife Against. I need just like little mini series, 8 episodes, 8 or 10 episodes. That's all I need. We could be done. Final chapters. Bam. Done. Closure. But anyway,
Ooh, living
but
single.
what I love about this is that just the nature of Noah's Ark broke barriers, centering lives of Black gay men that were necessary to tell. The cast, fantastic Daryl Stevens, Rodney Chester, Doug Spearman, Christian Vincent, Jensen Atwood, of course, um, Ian Polk, who's the creator behind the series. I'm really hoping it does well, and I think that we're gonna have some new and familiar faces. I think along with the cast, like Jasmine Guy, T.S. Madison, Kennedy Davenport, just all these great people. So yeah, I'm really hoping great things for the film. We're probably obviously gonna cover it once it does come out shortly after. But just Vernon, just obviously, did you watch Noah's Ark at some point? And just what did watching the show like mean to you for all of its beauty, its messiness, its everything?
So I'm not that gay. So now I've heard of Noah's Ark, but we didn't have the station growing up because we are come from a time where streaming was not the regular. You
Mm,
could not just pay $9.99 to get that station, and just watch it on your TV.
mm,
So I didn't get to watch Noah's Ark when it was running.
mm,
And it's also been one of those shows that I've been telling myself I need to go back and watch, which also includes The L Word, which I
mm,
believe is on Hulu. Now I did have access to, oh, I think I could have watched L Word because I think that aired on, it wasn't HBO. I feel like it was
mm,
CBS, but I didn't watch it because I was like, I don't really care to watch lesbian stuff. And I could have sworn it was nothing but white women. So I was like, I'm not really
mm,
intrigued. Just being real. But Noah's Ark, when I heard about it, I was like, oh, this is intriguing. And I think back on how I might have been influenced if I watched it. It may have
mm,
really helped me feel a little bit more seen because it was black queer men
mm,
versus what I saw parts of myself in while watching like Degrassi,
mm.
which great time to be alive watching
Yes.
Degrassi, The Next
Yes.
Generation real
Yes.
time every Friday or every Thursday, wherever day it came out back
Yes.
then, it was a good time.
Yes.
Like, but yeah, I do wish I had that as well, to go into that lexicon of what made me who I was in my development. But I am excited to see this film, just to get a taste of what so many people enjoyed. And I also plan on watching the series too, one of these months as I catch up
Yeah.
on things too.
No, but it's so great that you brought that up though, because like I remember, like, okay, so Noah's Ark came out in 2005. I don't think that I watched it until like because the thing about the series was that it was only 2 seasons, so
Hmm.
it's very quickly, very watchable in a short amount of time. I don't think I watched it until because I was 12 when it came out. I don't think I watched it until I was like 15, but I remember it coming on the station Logo because Logo was like the gay, like what I consider like the gay station or whatever, because that's where
Hmm.
like the L word would come on, Queer as Folk, and stuff like that. They would do reruns of those. And I just remember like just seeing like, oh my God, this brown chocolatey cast of men,
Hmm.
and I didn't really like understand like my sexuality at the time or not, but I was just like, oh, like this is different. Let me tune into this. I used to watch it like late at night, and I would just be so excited for it. And going back and rewatching it as an adult, I have a newer appreciation because it's like watching these four friends in their outer circle, like they are great at what they do. They're messy, they're complicated. And I think what the show really symbolized was that we are the main story. We're worthy of love, struggle, sex, joy, and complexity. And
Hmm.
again, it's not to say that, of course, I think if they even remade the show now to today, things obviously, yeah, will be different because there's so many conversations that, we're having today. But again, in 2005, we're getting a story with Alex and his husband raising a young daughter. We're getting the nature of Chance and his husband. Chance is a educator. Like when I think about who I colluminate to when I think about
Hmm.
Black queer characters, I say I'm a mixture of Chance from Noah's Ark and Lionel from Dear White People.
Lionel.
So I like,
Yes.
but the fact that Noah's Ark, like the show, was so groundbreaking to present those complexities. And again, it's not about writing everything right, or anything like that. Because, child, let me tell you, they also mess, they also messy. Messy boots. But yeah, and so the fact that we got the movie that followed up from from where season 2 ended, and now going to 20 years later, and baby, from that preview, I'm like, and people gonna
They
find me in the
look
comments, y'all.
fine.
Way is still a snack 20 years later. Like, oh, he just get Jen Atwood does not age, and he gets better with time. He is just he ages like fine wine. Like y'all know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I'm just really excited though to see the things that they do. I know that I think that Noah and Wade are contemplating like some sort of a birth or maybe adoption. I'm not quite sure. But it's just so great to see the friends back together, the cast back together. And during the nature of the show, again, they tackled storylines that HIV and HIV and AIDS. They tackled homophobia in the Black church. Again, gay parenting, closeted relationships in DL culture. You know, again, presenting a spectrum of Black SGL men, some that were a little bit more feminine than others that were more outwardly masculine. So again, this was a time where these conversations were beginning to take place, and Noah's Ark was so essential to that. So I'm just loving it. I'm gonna love to see what they have put together like
Hmm.
20 years later. So it's like catching up with like your big brothers, like seeing like, oh, what they up to.
Dude, like shows like Noah's Ark, and even I have to throw Degrassi in here too. It makes me whenever I hear people say, outside of just representation matter, but when people act as though there was not the media there,
Mhm.
that we can really dive into and re indulge ourselves with. It's confusing to me because I'm just like, I remember there being a lot of things. Was it on every single channel? No, but I knew it existed, right?
Mhm.
Like me, I saw ads for Queer as Folk. I think I saw a couple
Mhm.
episodes too on HBO. Those shows be picked up and all that other stuff all the time. And then I also saw advertisements from Noah's Ark. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this looks like it's something good, right?
Mhm.
Even though I didn't know that I had access to it, I knew that it existed, right? And I knew it was
Mhm.
something that I myself want to really watch, especially at that age. So whenever people talk about there being a lack of certain media, I'm just like, are you genuinely looking for it? Are
Yeah.
you making space for that to be something that introduce your digital palette to something else? Or is it that you hope that all media is supposed to be fed to you? And are you
Mhm.
just only engaging with the ones that's fed to you, like the most popular seasons or series, whenever they just magically pop up, like Game of Thrones did
Mhm.
back in what 2015, which was a good time. But like, what is it? Are you gaining access to this media, and what steps are you not making to
Yeah.
introduce yourself to the other spectrum of things? Like when people say, "Oh, I don't see enough black love in media or black men relationships," which there is a shortage, but there is media out there.
Right. And you can't just always go looking for like mainstream stuff because you're not going to find it. Like a
Hmm.
lot of like I love like a good web series. Like I think some of these web series they need to be on prime
Yeah.
time television because like they are like they are awesome. And so it's kind of like, for if you are a TV or a movie person like, like I am, it's like no, I go out and I go out and seek things. Like I will look up, oh, this actor was in this. Like, let me see if they're a part of anything else, or like, what's like a cross genre between this? Like, maybe this is something I would like, So, like you say, I think sometimes people they use it as an excuse to say, like, oh, yeah, nothing's out there. But it's like, yeah, have you looked?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, there's not as much as there needs to be, but it's like, it doesn't mean like it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So yeah, and although I'm just really excited, I'm really excited to see what they've come up with, for these 20, what they've been up to in these past 20 odd so years. Um and yeah, just getting back, I think it's really going to be one of those like no time has passed
Mm,
because they became like a staple in like black, especially the black queer culture. That I think is just gonna feel like that. It's just gonna feel like a reunion.
mm. This conversation reminded me that I need to catch up on the group chat, which is a TikTok series. It's not black produced, but it is so good. Well, as I learned, is that they are making this trip overseas, and oh girl, I think it was Ashley acting up. So I need to go ahead and catch up on that. But these
Also,
mini seasons, oh sorry.
exactly. No, I was gonna say also last plug for anybody that hasn't watched the Netflix show Forever. Um, Go ahead and check that out. That was actually really good. I just finished that up this weekend. It's an 8 episode season. They've been renewed for season two. It's based on a book from Judy Blume. I read some of Judy Blume's books when I was younger, and I think it's very interesting that they took one of her like I wouldn't say most controversial books, but one of her like more heavier storylines and actually turned it to in for like a black cast. And Mara Brock Akil is the executive producer for it. So of course, she's a staple in just Hollywood in general, but specifically giving us shows like Girlfriends, Half and Half, Moesha, all those great shows, The Game, all those great things. So I love the fact that they took a white, I'm just gonna put like white story and actually like made it different and actually centered it on black culture. So yeah, I would say yeah, check out the show Forever. Watching this show though, I will say it did give me a perspective like okay, I can now see why I am 30, 31, going on 32 cuz like some of these teenagers, I can't deal with it. Sometimes I look at them like I can't deal with it.
Which I definitely get. So that's going to be something that I add to my ever-ending list of media to watch. I still need to watch The Never Ever Mets, but I have it saved, so
Ugh, look,
it's on my
and I
list.
would say, and I would say probably for the Never Ever Mess, just stop at the first season because this season
Oh,
two is like atrocious. It doesn't even feel like the same show.
no.
I can't. I can't. Like I watched. It's like one of them
It's only
shows
been
where it's
two
like this
weeks.
is like such a train wreck, but it's like, all right, what are they gonna do next? I gotta
I'm
turn them.
done. It's only been what, 3 weeks since you brought it up that, oh yeah, this is such a great show. Let's go ahead
I
and watch
know,
it. Here we
but
are.
that was
It's
before
trash.
season two. That was before season two. I don't know what happened, y'all. Listen, to people who's listening to us, have y'all really ever watched the show and you're literally asking what happened between either an episode or a season? It's like, what happened?
Season three of Dear White People, because I literally was like,
Mm,
whoa, now I not y'all also throwing shade about Netflix series when they hit their third season and everything is not right, and then y'all in your third season and everything is just like it's not right. However, the story that they told in season three was needed. But I
well,
was just like, how, what's
mm.
going on here? And then season four, oh, I know people hated it, but I loved it because they read COVID for filth. I had a good time in season four. I don't know what y'all had going on, and then also the political things that they brought in the show too. But I enjoyed season four.
Yeah, we gonna do that for a future episode. We're gonna do like what are some like mass unpopular opinions about like some of like favorite like black movies or shows.
Oh, I'm here for it because it's time to
We're gonna do
talk
that.
about Waiting to Exhale because that was not a good man, mama. That's a good man, Savannah. Bitch, no, he's not. No. I'm sorry.
No, and all you need to know is if you want to really delve into like some of the nature waiting to exhale, uh fine as wine still after all these years. Bumper Robinson, who played on a different world, living single back in the day, has a particular line in one of the later seasons of A Different World where they're talking about the book Waiting to Exhale. And I love the line that he has in it when he says that, yeah, even though this is a female book club, uh why are we not also talking about the women and the non-accountability of their actions? So let that simmer
You know
in that
what? Can
this
we
was even first brought up during the 90s when this was
can we next week just unpack Waiting to Exhale? Like we don't have to do anything like popular. We need to talk about Waiting to Exhale. I love it. I even ask clients to like watch that sometimes depending on what phase of life that they're in to help them reconnect with themselves. But
Mhm.
there's so many problematic things that we really do need to talk about. So you down to talk about this next week?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's do
All
that.
right, bet. Y'all come back for that conversation. So, any last words that you have before I close everything out?
No, just really thank you for everybody who continues to listen to us. Be sure to like and subscribe and just always keep peace and love in your heart.
Ooh, amen. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought-provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well-being of the Black community. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your minds open. Bye, y'all.
Bye.